Okay guys, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a DIY style video on my fuel pump upgrade on my 335i. It already has a Walbro 450. We're going to go ahead and redo the Walbro 450 setup in the car. Here's the car. It's a pearl white 08 335i 6-speed manual transmission. It's tuned, runs full e85. It's an M54 car. Alright, so the first thing you're going to need to do in order to access your low pressure fuel pump on your 335 is go ahead and remove the rear seat here. You just grab around here and pull up. Then you just grab around here, pull up. We'll put the seat out the way for now. And you have your material here. Lift it up. Fold it back. Use your seatbelt guide to kind of hold it in place. We'll access the fuel pump door here. It'll be 4 10mm bolts that'll hold it in place. Alright, so a few tools we'll need for this job. We'll need a flat tip, a few extensions, 10mm socket, a ratchet, and fuel pump lock ring remover tool. This is OEM Tools, part number 25156. You can order it on Amazon, it's about $20. We'll need to go ahead and remove this access cover here. Once we remove the access cover, undo the 4 10mm bolts. Once you undo the access cover, get your 4 10mm bolts, put them out the way. I like to tend to put them right there. We'll go ahead and remove the access cover, which will be exposing the fuel pump. Go ahead and unplug these two connectors here. And then once you're done with that, we will go ahead and start the car. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to start the car and let it die. It'll instantly die. What that'll do is that'll go ahead and relieve pressure on your high pressure fuel pump lines. That way when you remove the lines off the pump, you won't get any back. So as you can see, I have my lock ring OEM tool in place. You'll see the lock ring has these little teeth. You just try to even it up, tighten the screws up, make it work. As you can see, that lock ring gets pretty tight. Yeah, sometimes it does take some force to remove it. Just be extremely careful when unscrewing it. This will like to pop up, it's spring loaded. So push down on the center with one hand, unscrew your lock ring with the other. When you're done, you'll have to kind of feed the lock ring around this hose because there's really no room. Be extremely careful in doing this because the lock ring is sharp. First time I did it, I really cut my thumb pretty badly. All right, so as you guys can see, I really had to fight with this lock ring here. I finally got it off. This will spring up. You'll be careful. Like I said, my car, I've already done this upgrade before. So you'll have this connector here. It's tan. It's just like the top fuel pump connector, except for it's all tan. You'll want to squeeze it, try to pull it down. It's extremely easy to break, so be careful. As you can see, mine just kind of came right off. Then you'll have your fuel gauge, which mine didn't even look connected. We'll go ahead and undo that. Just a push connector. Then you have the pump itself, the red and brown wire. Just go ahead and undo that right there. It's also just a push connector. You just push the connector. And it'll pop right off. Then we're done with this. We'll set it out the way for now because there's no real need for it. If you look down in the tank here, see if I can get some better lighting for you. In the tank, you'll see there's two fuel lines. They just pop off the top right here. They supply fuel to the bucket. You'll just undo those. Then you have another line here. It's identical to the top small line. It's a green connector. You push it in, it pops off. So when you're done and you're ready to remove it, be careful. Push the lines out the way. Come up. It'll tilt here. And as you can see, the gauge here goes towards the passenger side. Be careful with the bucket. Let it drain out all its fuel. And we'll just remove it just like this. Here's the assembly in two pieces. It'll have a guide rope here. Cut that. It locks the top to the bottom of it. We'll go ahead. The fuel pumps here. I just have it sitting on the lid of a box I use to store some tools in. Just to keep the pump up off the ground. So as you can see here, I already did a 450 upgrade on this car, but I kind of had an issue where I cut the bottom of the bucket off to kind of make it a bucketless setup. But what would happen is when the tank would get low, the sock here would rest against a gauge, so it would never go ahead and actually accurately display how much fuel was left in the tank. It would get to about halfway and then stop. So I went ahead and went to the junkyard and pulled another bucket out of I think it's a 325i. They're identical. We're gonna go ahead and disassemble that now. That way we can go ahead and reuse this bucket for my 450 here. So we're gonna, as you can see here, there's a little clip right here. So right here on the sides, there's two of them. This is what holds the pump float. Will hold the fuel tank float to the bucket itself, and then there'll be a wire run here. We'll go ahead and undo that because we're not going to reuse this float. My float's good. I just mainly bought this from the junkyard for the tank. That way I could eliminate my issues. So here, we'll go ahead and pop the top piece off. It should just separate if I remember correctly. Alright, so what you'll have to do is, you can kind of see it here. You'll have to get a flat tip down here on this edge, pop it off. There's three of them. You'll go ahead and pop it off. Try to wiggle the fuel pump wires out. We'll set this aside here on this. Now we're gonna go ahead and remove the fuel pump float that came out of my car. Like I said, I'm going to personally reuse this one because I know it was good before the 450 upgrade. I don't know the condition of the float I got out of the 325i at the junkyard this morning. So we'll go ahead and take my float for my 335. We will set it to the side here. Try to keep it separate. We'll go ahead and remove the pump out of mine. Like I said, the reason I'm doing this is because I cut the bottom of the bucket off. I should just be able to pop it out with no real issues. As you can see, here's my old bucket. It served its purpose. Not exactly the best way to do things, but I mean, you live and you learn. Here's my Walbro 450. As you can see, I put it in back in July. It's now December. It's been working pretty good for me. So same thing goes as how we did the top lock piece. We'll go ahead and you can either heat it up. I have a knife here. I'm gonna try and wedge between there, but while it is very sharp, I think it's just going to break the knife. So we will use the flat tip method. Ideally, you would want to heat this up some to make it malleable, which I probably will go do using a hair dryer. Alright, so as you can see here, I took a flat tip and just kind of popped this off from the glue it on. It's not the best. As you can see, I kind of cracked the bucket right here, which isn't a big deal because the bucket fills with fuel. It's just submerged in the fuel tank, so it's not that big a deal. So we're going to go ahead and pull this out. Pull this out also. Here's your stock fuel pump. It's very tiny. So we'll just go ahead and undo that. So here's my Walbro. We'll go ahead and put the fuel pump wires back into the holder. And as you can see, you kind of got to pry this part here over the 450 using a flat tip, or so be it. It doesn't affect the pump any. It just kind of slides over it, butt it up against here. Make sure your sock is on. And then you can see the marks here. Mine, I obviously broke it, so I know exactly where it goes. We're just gonna slide this piece back into the bucket here, and I'm gonna go ahead and go get some screws so we can, because what I plan to do is what most people do. They just kind of put a self-tap screw through here. They'll suspend the pump inside the bucket. Fairly simple to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and go get those parts and I'll get back. Okay, so as you can see, the stock fuel pump here has what's called a venturi. It essentially floods the bucket out with fuel. Personally, I deleted it on this last setup because the Walbro 450 doesn't use it. Some people, they just buy a T, connect it here, run it down into the pump of the bucket. As you can see on my last setup, I just cut the bucket off. It worked great, just the level standard wasn't exactly right, so the gauge was always off. So on this one, what I did is I went ahead and cut the bucket off, cut the venturi hole out, and left it that way the sock doesn't interfere with the gauge. I'm gonna go ahead and deburr all this, clean it up some, and then reassemble it. I'll get back with you. Alright, so as you can see, most people, they go ahead and zip tie this back together. I'm not gonna do that. Self-tappers is what I use. It actually works pretty good. As you can see, if I ever want to upgrade the pump in the future, I can just remove them, and then I'll be able to go ahead and do that. I went ahead and cut the bottom, like I said, so now the gauge and sender will be able to sit here. I won't have to worry about this ever getting in the way and stopping the fuel pump again from displaying the correct and accurate size. So it's going to work out pretty. Alright guys, so we're back in the car now. Got the fuel pump set up. We're going to go ahead and reinstall it. Alright, so we got the car back together. It's time to go ahead and start the car. Go ahead and start it, see if our gauge goes. Now below 4. It would only ever go from half to full. It would never display below half. Well, as we can see, the gauge now works. So that's great. So as we can see, car's still running great. Now the gauge, it'll need to reset. Not that big a deal. I got my MHD gauges running there. So overall, DIY, super simple. Takes maybe about two hours, maybe 3 if you've never ever done anything mechanically. Not a difficult DIY. It's fairly simple to go ahead and do. See you guys next time. Peace.